Hello and welcome to another episode of Her Helping Habit on Air. We are a Canadian fertility agency specializing in known egg donation, embryo donation, and surrogacy, helping intended parents, surrogates, and donors navigate their journeys through education, support, and advocacy. Through open conversations and shared experiences, we aim to empower everyone involved in the family building process. Her Helping Habit on Air does not provide medical advice. These are simply lived experiences shared to help make the often uncharted world of infertility feel a little less scary. My name is Jess, and I am one of our egg and embryo donor coordinators here at Her Helping Habit. And today I am joined by Sharon from Fertilidad Integral and Sarah from Her Helping Habits. So Sharon is dedicated to supporting international patients over at FI and serving as their point of contact and helping them navigate their fertility journey as they come to Mexico. Sarah is our program manager here with our known egg donor program at Her Helping Habit and is one of the coordinators that supports both intended parents and donors through each step of the process. So thank you both for making the time to come chat with me today.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, so let's start off with, I'd love to know a bit more about what is involved in each of your roles. So Sharon, do you want to tell me a bit about, what you do in your day-to-day?
Well, I basically welcome the patients who come into the clinic. I also try to give you the best follow-up emotional care, like ask you how you're doing. Like if you want to have a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, or if you want a cookie or a biscuit, I can give it to you. Also, I'm in charge of scheduling your appointments, seeing the payment through the IPs or the clinics. And yeah.
Awesome. And Sarah, how about you? What does your job look like over on the agency side?
Yeah, so I'm the donor program manager, and I've also been a donor myself, so I do have that background and knowledge, and that's really helped me support both intended parents and donors. So basically, my role is to go through our donor database, meet with intended parents, make sure this is the direction, talk about why known donation is really important, and go through our donor database with them, help them find the right match, meet the donor on a video call, make sure we're all connected and aligned, and then help everyone move forward in all the logistics. So that includes, sending the referrals to the clinic, sending out different referrals to doctors, supporting people through pretty much every step of the process, and really doing a lot of hand-holding and helping both sides, both the donor and the IPs, navigate this journey together.
That's incredible. And Sarah, what do you enjoy most about working with international patients or international clients?
It's interesting. It's a little bit more complicated. There's a lot of different pieces and steps that are needed to make a fertility journey come together in any country, but particularly across borders. And that's always sort of been an odd passion of mine. I've done a few international cycles, like I lived in Winnipeg while I was an egg donor, but I never actually cycled in Winnipeg. I did all of my cycles traveling. So I have a good depth of experience to draw on there, and I just find it interesting and challenging work to help do international coordination.
Definitely very interesting. I definitely see the relation to your personal life there too. And how about you, Sharon? What do you enjoy most about working with international patients?
Mainly the cultural exchange and having somebody come to your country. It's very interesting because you get to point out special parts of the city that nobody else sees. Mm-hmm. And you get to show somebody else your point of view of the place that you live. Speaking of, general patients who come in for an IVF journey or egg freezing, they get to do that within their own terms, and they get to look for another place that they feel better at. I've had many patients who said that when they come here, they don't feel like they're going for a medical consultation because it doesn't feel scary, or the lighting isn't cold, or it feels like going for a cup of coffee at somebody else's home. Mm-hmm. So it feels more cozy, this whole journey, this process. It's not that scary for them. And yeah, that and the cultural exchange.
Yeah, it's definitely really interesting. I know throughout this collaboration, I've definitely learned a lot about the culture down in Mexico, and it's been really intriguing to learn about. And Sharon, what's something that you wish every patient would know before they start their fertility journey in Mexico?
Mostly that they can pamper themselves here with wellness sessions. Mm-hmm. And this feels like more of a touristic travel rather than a medical reason, because they get to explore the city, they get to pamper themselves with either the city itself or at the clinic with wellness sessions. They can get massages or acupuncture, or they can go out to a museum. We have many museums here in Mexico, or to our parks. We have a lot of things to do here. So it's not like going for a medical consultation and only going from your hotel to the clinic. It's more like going to the clinic and then starting your day and discover the city and have fun, and then go back to your hotel, rest, and then come back to the clinic and do it all over again.
Oh, yeah, that is really interesting. And Sarah, you have got kind of that Canadian standpoint from going into Mexico for a fertility journey. What's one thing that you would want every patient to know about before going to Mexico?
Well, I mean, from my perspective, I would say that known is an option. And a lot of people doing their journeys in Mexico just have no idea that known could be an option because it's not at a lot of clinics. And so we're really glad to offer something that's pretty radically different from what's typically offered to a lot of people. So just to add on to Sharon's point as well, is that it can be a fun experience for the donors and for the IPs. Like, you get to travel, you get to experience the city. The food is outstanding in Mexico City, and that is definitely a highlight for me when I get to go visit the city for work. And I think that you have a lot of free time in between treatments and appointments, and you definitely get a cultural experience there. And for someone that loves food so much, that's something that I really appreciated about traveling, and in Mexico City has just incredible food.
Yeah, that's definitely the thing that I hear about from absolutely everyone that has either been to Mexico, is going to Mexico, is from Mexico, is get the food.
Yeah.
So, all right. So, Sharon, can you tell me what fertility treatment options would be available to international patients thinking about coming to Fertilidad?
Yes, of course. You can choose if you want to preserve your fertility or if you want to build a family. So if you want to preserve, you can freeze your sperm, you can freeze eggs, or you can freeze embryos for the future. And if you want to build a family, if you have frozen embryos, you can do a frozen embryo transfer. If you have frozen eggs, you can do a devitrification, fertilization, and transfer of the eggs. We also have a new technology, EmbryoScope, that allows us to record the embryo growth. And I think that's important because in Mexico, we don't have that in many clinics. And we have 2 of them.
Very cool.
Yeah. And it's fun to see the faces, but it is also great to see the faces of our patients when we tell them that they can record the embryo growth and have a keychain of it.
Oh, yeah, wow.
That's exactly the face that they do.
I didn't even know that part. That's so cool.
Yeah, and they can see it all over again if they want to. They can show it to their relatives.
That is very cool. And then, Sarah, what kind of services does Her Helping Habit offer that kind of go alongside the treatment options with Fertilidad?
So we would primarily be coordinating IVF cycles for donors, and that's for a lot of gay couples, straight couples, or single people, anyone who needs an egg donor. We're going to help you from the whole part of embryo creation. So everything from finding your donor, meeting your donor, helping facilitate contact with that person and building a relationship, all of the external stuff. So doing counseling, doing a legal contract with your donor, and then supporting you all through the cycle as you go through that. And then once your embryos are frozen, hopefully you're able to successfully conceive.
Incredible. Yeah, definitely a lot of hand holding from our side. And so, Sharon, what happens after a patient contacts FI for the first time?
The first step would be to get them a consultation with one of our specialists so they can discuss what they want to do, and the doctor can assess them. They can tell them, if you have tests, you can show it to them, and then they can come out with a personalized treatment plan and tell you if you need to change habits. Let's say a homoparental couple, if they both want to create embryos, they need to give us a test called spermatobioscopy or DNA fermentation test. And then the doctor can see if they need to change a habit or something in their food, in their nutrition, or if they need to take supplements so that we can get the best quality sperm to make the best quality embryos that we can.
And Sarah, how about on the donor side? What would her first contact with FI look like from your experience?
It's usually an initial consultation where the doctor goes over her medical history, just takes a thorough history of who she is and any medical concerns, and then makes a treatment plan based on her specific results. Then she's going to have an in-person screening appointment, whether that's local to her or at the clinic, and that'll do a battery of tests, genetics, blood tests, like everything, just to make sure that she is a suitable candidate and that the process is going to be safe for her. And then once she's medically approved, then we can start planning the actual cycle.
That's awesome. And you mentioned possibly doing some testing local to her. How much of the process could be completed before traveling to Mexico?
Usually, almost all of the screening can be done locally. It really depends on where the donor lives and if she has access to fertility clinics or a laboratory near her that can complete the testing. In most cases, we can arrange all of that locally. Of course, if the donor lives in Mexico City, then it makes sense for her to just attend the clinic in person, so they're all handling it directly. And then typically for donors that travel from outside of Mexico, we do expect them to spend the duration of the IVF cycle in Mexico.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Sharon, what about on the intended parents' side? How much of the process could they complete before coming to Mexico?
Before coming to Mexico, they can complete their tests as well. They could only come to the clinic for 3 days to leave the samples and then fly back home, and we'll follow everything else.
That's great. And how long do patients typically need to stay in Mexico for treatment? So 3 days to give a sperm sample, but what about for an embryo transfer? How long would they need to be in Mexico for?
Well, the IPs can be in Mexico for as long as they want to. The donors or surrogates, they need to be here for 15 to 18 days for the ovarian stimulation process, and then 5 days for the embryo transfer.
Okay, interesting. And Sarah, how long does Her Helping Habit usually send donors to Mexico for when they're doing a donation cycle?
I'd say the average is about 17 to 18 days. We need them there the day before they start medications, and then they're taking medications for an average of 11 to 12 days before they do the trigger shot. Then, of course, their retrieval process is 36 hours later. And then we need at least 2 days of recovery before they're headed home, just to make sure that before we put them on a plane that they're doing well and they have a chance to get one last checkup at the clinic and monitor any potential complications after that can be dealt with in-house.
Yes, it is very important that they stay here for more days than the average treatment because we want to assess them afterwards and make sure that everything is all right and that they can fly back home safely.
We do what we can. We like them to stay at least 48 hours after retrieval, and that is also mandatory for insurance purposes, but just to make sure that they have a chance to have any symptoms, and then we can delay travel if we need to be, because I wouldn't want one of my donors to be having any complications and then we put her back on a plane and now she can't access care. I want to make sure that we're dealing with those as they come up. So usually things are pretty evident within 48 hours, and we will absolutely delay travel if it's needed. But at the same time, people are also usually pretty anxious to get back home and recover in their own homes,
Yeah, well put. And so what does the treatment journey look like once a patient arrives in Mexico?
When a donor arrives in Mexico, she's usually comes in the day before we anticipate the stimulation start. And then she's going to arrive at the clinic in the morning, have blood work and an ultrasound. If everything looks clear, she's given some injections while she's still at the clinic. They typically have them do injections in the morning. And then she has a few days free. So typically that's a really good time to explore the city, is in those first few days, because we know that you don't have another appointment for at least 4 days. You're just going to be doing your medications yourself at home in the morning, or you can go to the clinic to have them administered if you feel like you need a little bit of extra help, but most people can choose to do them in their accommodations. And yeah, that's a really great time to go out and do some cool touristy stuff.
Excellent. And Sharon, how about on the clinic side? What does the treatment journey look like for a patient?
Here at the clinic, they would come on the second day of their cycle, and then they get medications for 4 or 5 days approximately. And then they come back to the clinic and they would have to be here every other day or every third day to get their checkups and blood work and ultrasounds so that we can know that everything is going correctly and that everything is checked. And if the doctors need to modify the medication, they do it. And yeah, so that takes up 10 days maybe. And then after that, we send them the trigger shot. And then 36 hours after, like Sarah said, we do the egg retrieval.
Excellent. And Sharon, what happens after the egg retrieval in terms of, follow-up steps and how the frozen embryos would be stored at the clinic?
So for the donor, after the egg retrieval, we would like to have them back in 48 hours or until their next period starts. But we understand that they cannot stay that long. So 48 hours is perfectly. And then we create the embryos that same day of the egg retrieval. We put them in an incubator, and the embryologists take them out after the first day, and they can see which ones got to fertilize and which ones didn't. And then they put them back into the incubator. They leave them there for 5 to 6 days, and then they take them back out to assess which ones are blastocytes and which ones need an extra day or two, and then they put those back in. And they start the process to freeze the embryos that we already have. If the parents want to do PGTA testing, which is pre-implantation testing, the embryologists do a biopsy of the embryos when they take them out from the incubator, and then they prepare the sample to send them to the laboratory. And in the meantime, the embryos are kept frozen in tiny straws, and then they put them in a bigger vial. And then they put those into liquid nitrogen, and that's where we keep the cells. And yes, they are kept in tanks, very safe tanks. Here in Mexico, we have earthquakes. They are safe. So in case of anything, they would survive.
That's awesome. I am fascinated by vitrification and everything to do with embryo freezing. So yeah, that was a great way to go over that process. Thank you for doing that. And Sarah, how about on the agency side? What would the steps for Her Helping Habit and, the donor and her coordinator be after that egg retrieval?
Well, we're just primarily making sure the egg donor is doing well and waiting for the embryo updates that we're all very excited to hear. That can be a really important part for the egg donors too, is hearing those numbers later. It's a really rewarding aspect to the journey to them. We're all waiting on edge just to see what we ended up with on that day 5, day 6 update. In the meantime, we're taking care of finances, so making sure the donor is reimbursed for any of her expenses and managing that logistical side of things and making sure she gets home safely.
Perfect. And so, Sarah, what are some of the most common questions or concerns that you hear from patients before they start treatment in Mexico?
A lot of people want to know if the city's safe. So, I always tell them there's a Ferrari dealership right around the corner from the clinic that usually they can't sell Ferraris in areas that are really unsafe. And the areas I have always felt very comfortable walking around, even alone, even at night in Palenque, in that area that FEE is located in. So I have no concerns about that, but that is something that I get asked pretty often. And then will they be able to get around with English speaking? Because a lot of people aren't going to necessarily be fluent in Spanish, and it's pretty easy to get around if you don't have too much Spanish. Of course, a little bit always helps, and I think everyone should just do a couple quick Duolingo lessons before they depart, but you can usually get by. And they just want to make sure that the clinic is good quality clinic. So we have a little walkthrough video that we can send people, some information on what the clinic looks like. And I think that really puts people's mind at ease, but especially when they first enter the clinic. It's really beautiful inside. There's a coffee bar, a little pastry section, and a great view. And so I think a lot of people love to see what the clinic looks like because it is a really lovely space in there and very warm and inviting.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Sharon, how about you? What are some of the most common questions that you typically get asked about treatment in Mexico?
I think Sarah and we get the same questions because I also get asked, is the city safe? Am I going to have any trouble translating things or communicating with people there? And so my answers are the same. Polanco is a very safe neighborhood, and you get to walk here at night alone if you want. We have a lot of tourism here, so many of us speak English. And so the thing that they say after they arrive is that we are very welcoming.
That's beautiful. Yeah. And Sarah, what advice would you give to someone who is considering becoming a parent through egg donation?
Yeah, I always encourage people to think about the world through the lens of their child and what that looks like for them in the future. So, it can be easy to get your baby blinders on and just pursuing that family goal for yourself. But once your baby arrives, it's a broader topic. So exploring what the relationship, what looks like with your donor, letting that grow organically and what kind of contact you're hoping to have.
Yeah, very good advice, especially when they're first starting out in that donor selection process too.
Yeah, and thinking about what's really important in finding a donor for you. some people come in with a list of very specific things, but if you're flexible, it's more about finding that right person and that right connection, because it is someone you'll be connected to for many, many years to come.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And Sharon, what about you? What advice would you give to someone who's considering becoming a parent through egg donation?
To research and to keep in mind that this is a long process and that it has its ups and downs. To remember also that medicine is not an exact science. As much as we try to give you the best outcome possible, health is not 100% predictable. But yeah, at the end, everything will be worth it once you get your child at home and you get to play with them and hear their little laughter. Yeah, this whole process will be worth it.
I think that's a great point for people to keep in mind, that it's not always a super straight and short point A to point B, like can be a lot of ups and downs, and it's a journey.
Yeah, a lot of unexpected turns as well. It doesn't always look how you think it's going to in the beginning. Well, thank you both so much for taking the time to come talk to me about what this journey looks like for some people and what they might be able to expect from this. I really appreciate talking to you both today.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
If you'd like to connect with us or have questions about known egg donation, embryo donation, surrogacy, becoming a parent, or exploring whether becoming a surrogate or donor is right for you, you can find us online at Her Helping Habit or email us at info@herhelpinghabit.com. We're passionate about educating and supporting all parties throughout the journey, and you can also book a free consultation with one of our coordinators directly through our website. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you again soon on the next episode of Her Helping Habit on Air. Thank you.